In the heart of the Sahel, where the heat bends reality, a single message from the White House sent shockwaves across the globe. A ghost had been silenced. President Donald Trump announced that the world's most dangerous organization, the Islamic State, had lost its second-in-command in a joint operation with Nigerian forces. But who was this shadow? And how did a superpower team up with West Africa's giant to strike deep within the impenetrable marshes of the Lake Chad Basin? For over a decade, northern Nigeria has been the epicenter of a brutal insurgency that claimed tens of thousands of lives. While the world watched the Middle East, a deadlier faction was rising in the shadows of the Sahara. The Islamic State West Africa Province, or ISWAP, broke away from Boko Haram, bringing a new, more calculated level of terror. They weren't just rebels, they were a franchise of a global caliphate, hungry for power and territory. The geography of this conflict is as unforgiving as the fighters themselves. The Lake Chad Basin is a labyrinth of islands, tall grasses, and seasonal swamps that hide entire armies. It is here that ISWAP built its stronghold, far from the prying eyes of conventional satellites. For the Nigerian military, fighting in this terrain is a nightmare of visibility and logistics, where every thicket could hide an ambush and every island holds a dark secret. The announcement by the US president was specific but shrouded in mystery. He claimed the target was the number 2 leader of the entire ISIS network. This statement blurred the lines between the central leadership in the Middle East and the local commanders in West Africa. Was this a global leader hiding in the bush, or a regional kingpin whose influence had grown so large that the White House took notice of his every single move? Cooperation between Washington and Abuja has always been a complex dance of diplomacy and distrust. For years, the US hesitated to provide heavy weaponry due to human rights concerns. However, the rise of ISWAP changed the calculus. Suddenly, the intelligence sharing became more frequent, and the drone flights over the Sambisa forest and Lake Chad became a constant hum in the sky, marking the beginning of a new, high-tech phase of the silent war. The target was a man of many names. In the world of clandestine operations, identity is a fluid concept. Intelligence reports suggested he was responsible for coordinating the brutal attacks that devastated Nigerian military outposts and terrorized local populations. He was the bridge between the global ambition of the Islamic State and the local grit of the West African fighters, making him the most hunted individual in the entire region for several long, bloody years. Nigerian Special Forces are the elite vanguard in this struggle. Trained for jungle and swamp warfare, these soldiers operate in the most hostile conditions imaginable. They are the boots on the ground that verify the data provided by eyes in the sky. Their mission is often executed under the cover of darkness, moving silently through the tall grasses of the northeast to strike at the heart of the insurgency before the sun begins to rise. The operation that killed the second-in-command was not a single event, but the culmination of months of painstaking surveillance. Sources suggest that a combination of signal intelligence and local informants narrowed down the target's location to a specific cluster of islands. It was a high-stakes gamble. One wrong move would tip off the target, allowing him to vanish back into the endless maze of the Chad Basin, where he had hidden for so many years. When the strike finally came, it was swift and devastating. Reports indicate that precision munitions were used, a hallmark of US involvement, combined with a ground sweep by Nigerian troops. The aftermath revealed the scale of the operation. This wasn't just a skirmish, it was a surgical removal of a key node in the ISWAP hierarchy. But as the smoke cleared, the world waited for confirmation. Who exactly had been killed in the remote marshlands? Donald Trump's announcement was uncharacteristically brief but impactful. By labeling the individual as the second-in-command of the entire Islamic State, he elevated the Nigerian theater of war to the forefront of global attention. This wasn't just a local problem anymore, it was a central pillar of the global war on terror. The recognition validated the efforts of the Nigerian military but also placed a massive target on the back of every commander remaining in the field. Within Nigeria, the news was met with a mixture of relief and skepticism. For the people of Borno and Yobe states, leaders come and go, but the violence often remains. They have heard many times before that the end of the war was near, only to see the insurgents regroup and strike back with renewed fury. The death of a high-ranking official is a tactical victory, but the residents know that the roots of the conflict run deep. The internal politics of ISWAP are notoriously lethal. When a leader falls, it triggers a violent scramble for power. intelligence experts watch closely to see who would emerge from the chaos. The group has a history of brutal purges, where even the most loyal commanders are executed for perceived weakness. The killing of the second-in-command didn't just hurt their operational capacity, it set off a chain reaction of internal paranoia that threatened to tear the group apart. The United States' role in this specific kill remains partially classified. While the president was quick to take credit, the level of direct kinetic involvement by U.S. forces on Nigerian soil is a sensitive topic. Nigeria is protective of its sovereignty, yet it desperately needs the technical edge that the U.S. military provides. This operation was a masterclass in behind-the-scenes warfare, where the lines between assistance and direct action are intentionally blurred to maintain political balance. Analysts began to piece together the identity of the fallen leader. Many believe it was a figure responsible for the expansion of ISWAP into the Sahelian borderlands. This individual had been instrumental in recruiting foreign fighters and securing supply lines that stretched across the Sahara into Libya. His death was a significant blow to the logistics of the caliphate, cutting off the vital arteries that kept the insurgency fed with weapons and fresh, radicalized recruits. The Nigerian Air Force played a critical role in the lead-up to the strike. Their Alpha jets and newly acquired Super Tucanos have been patrolling the skies, providing the air cover necessary for ground troops to move. The coordination between the air and ground assets is often the difference between a successful mission and a catastrophic failure. In the case of the second-in-command, the precision of the airstrikes left the insurgents with absolutely nowhere to run. But as with all stories from the Sahel, there is a shadow of doubt. Some independent observers question the timing of the announcement. In the world of high-stakes politics, a victory against a global terror group is a powerful currency. Was the target truly the second-in-command of the entire global ISIS network, or was he the leader of the West African branch? The distinction matters to historians, but to the soldiers on the ground, a dead enemy is a victory. The death of a leader often leads to a shift in tactics. Deprived of their strategic head, ISWAP cells began to operate more independently, leading to a period of unpredictable and scattered attacks. This decentralization makes the group harder to track but also less capable of holding large swaths of territory. The Nigerian military had to adapt quickly, shifting from major offensives to a more agile, intelligence-driven counterinsurgency strategy to keep the remaining cells on the defensive. In the villages of the northeast, the impact of the strike was felt in the quiet moments. For a few weeks, the roads were safer, and the markets were fuller. The removal of a high-level commander disrupts the tax collection and the forced recruitment that ISWAP uses to sustain itself. It provides a small window of normalcy for a population that has forgotten what it feels like to live without the constant fear of a midnight raid. The global perspective on the Nigerian conflict changed after this operation. International partners began to see the Lake Chad Basin not just as a regional crisis, but as a critical front in the global fight against extremism. This led to increased training programs and better equipment for the Nigerian armed forces. The legacy of that single strike continues to influence the strategic partnerships that define West African security today, bringing more eyes to this often neglected corner of the world. However, the Islamic State is an organization built on the idea of martyrdom. Every leader killed is replaced by another, often younger and more radical. The second-in-command was gone, but the ideology that powered him remained entrenched in the poverty and lack of opportunity that plagues the border regions. Military force can kill a commander, but it cannot kill a feeling of marginalization. This is the true challenge that the Nigerian government faces in the long run. Years later, the details of that night in the marshes remain a topic of debate in intelligence circles. Some documents suggest the operation was even more complex, involving local hunters who know the islands better than any satellite. These hunters, armed with ancient knowledge and modern grit, are the unsung heroes of the counterinsurgency. They provided the final pieces of the puzzle that allowed the joint forces to strike with such absolute and terrifying precision. The relationship between Trump's administration and the Nigerian presidency during this period was marked by a shared focus on hard power. Both leaders prioritized military solutions to complex social problems. This alignment facilitated the swift execution of high-value target missions. While controversial to some, this era saw a significant increase in the lethality of the Nigerian military's response to ISWAP, proving that when the two nations work together, no target is out of their reach. Ultimately, The killing of the ISIS second-in-command serves as a reminder of the hidden wars being fought every day. In the remote corners of Nigeria, soldiers and civilians alike are caught in a struggle that rarely makes the evening news in the West. It is a war of shadows, where a single drone strike or a whispered tip can change the course of history. The victory was real, but the struggle for a lasting peace continues. The elimination of a high-ranking commander is a victory, but in the Sahel, the war of ideas persists long after the guns fall silent. As Nigeria and the world reflect on this historic operation, the question remains, can military might ever fully extinguish a fire fueled by ideology? For now, the dust settles on the Lake Chad Basin, leaving behind a legacy of a secret war that briefly united a global superpower and a West African titan.